Okay. So the first part of it is the airline. So the narrative here is about him and his navigator in the airplane. The two of them are basically lost, like they don't really know where they have to go, and he describes their experience. And what I always find quite interesting, it has a certain magic to it, doesn't it? Like what he experiences, sure, it's just what he himself lived through, but and I mean, we only read it in translation, but I think it's even in the translation, his use of language has a certain magic to it, and I think he's really good in finding the right metaphors and analogies for bringing for getting his feelings across, his emotions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but what did you dislike about like those first chapters, or should we go through like several of them? Like,
oh yeah, the first one was when they're flying from Spain, isn't it? Or from France, I'm not quite sure. And then they are lost in the skies, right? And they're searching for the airport. Is that the first
yeah,
chapter?
exactly. And the interesting thing is that story, I think it has a beginning, but doesn't really have an end.
Yeah, and this is what I think appears quite often in this book, that and I think this again, connects to the fragmentation of the past and of the memory, that it doesn't have a beginning nor it has end. So it's sort of like,
Okay.
it's up to you, because you as a person, when you remember something, it doesn't have a clear beginning. It's not like starting a YouTube video when you say like, hello people, this is us, this is what we're going to be talking about. It's a continuous thing. And yeah, and I think the ending, especially in the chapter that I already talked about a bit briefly, it's quite interesting and questionable.
Now, but I find it interesting that you say it's because that's how memories work, because like I guess that's a very valid interpretation, but I thought that he just did it this way because it wasn't important to him anymore. Like it wasn't important for bringing across the point he wanted to make. Because in the introduction of the book, it also says that he had like also regarding his literary works, that he had almost an obsession with like cutting it down to its very core and to not have any unnecessary things there. And that's the reason, or that's like why I thought, wait, no, I thought that was the reason for him actually often having those narrative storylines without any end, or sometimes without a beginning.
Because, as you said, that's not what matters. Like when you go through an empowering experience that changes your life, when he was flying that plane. Okay, so to explain it to our viewers, he was on a plane in the middle of a storm, if I'm correct. And back then in 1920s, there were like clouds and he couldn't see the airport where he was trying to land.
So they saw like stars and stuff and thought those were the lights of the city they were.
Exactly. So they were lost up there in the sky. And back then there was almost no navigation system. Like right now, like today, if you were a pilot, you just fly and you land and that's it.
Have your GPS.
Exactly, GPS, exactly. But back then, when you were up there in the middle of the night above the clouds and you saw stars, there was really no way to navigate to get to the airport where you want to get. And that's everything what he saw. And there's a funny situation that happens. And apparently, as he was taking off with the plane, he crossed some regulations on the airport, right? And then he receives a call from, not a call, like a message, I think. I don't really know how it technically works, but he gets a message that he's going to be on probation, or that he's going to get into trouble when he lands back.
Yeah, he has to talk to some official as soon as
exactly, and that's exactly what he's trying to say. This is the last thing you care about up there when you are lost.
I think he even says like that, like this message had no right to reach him up there in that situation.
Oh yeah, and there was also a part when he says, the people down there are the victims. I think I couldn't really like wrap my head about it, but we can leave it for later.
But that was a different part of the book. Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh my god! See, and this is exactly how Now I'm gonna try to turn into my advantage that I was mistaken. This is how the construction of memory works. You combine things, and you do not really know when they happen. What was the second chapter?
The second chapter was Comrades.
Oh yes.
So that's or do you want to go into it?
Now you go into it. I didn't really take much from the first third of the book.
Okay, so in this chapter, Comrades, he describes his own experiences with camaraderie. Wait, did I write anything down about that? Wait, I'm actually gonna quickly go through it. How was it? Oh yeah, it is from that chapter, I think. Yeah, exactly. So he describes the importance of camaraderie, and he also describes stories from his comrades, especially one where a pilot he was friends with crashed in the Andes, I think, in South America, and this man did something which nobody expected he would be able to do. So he crashed, it was snowing, it was extremely cold, and he was in the middle of the mountains.
Yeah.
And he nevertheless manages to get back to civilization, thinking about his wife, like his responsibility towards her, and thinking like if he gets lost and nobody finds him, it will take years until they pay out her insurance claim.
Exactly.
That's actually the motivating force for him. And afterwards, he says, "No animal could have done what I have done."
Yeah, that's the quote from the book. From this part of the book, I think.
Like, de Saint-Exupéry, he mentions it twice, that quote, and the pride with which his comrade said it, and I know he really appreciates what, like, the kind of energy he put in there, and the kind of thing it means to be able to say that. I think like that's one of the things de Saint-Exupéry appreciates about humanity.
This is what distinguishes us from animals.
Yeah, like this force of life, and overcoming certain things, discovering new things.
Yeah, and also I think doing things for others. I think that's, love and relationships, and camaraderie and friendships, relationships. This is all what makes us human. What, to some extent, not to some extent, to a great extent, gives our lives meaning. Because there's a part in the book later on when he says that the meaning of life equals to the meaning of death, basically. Which I think is very fitting to the story, that this guy who was walking in the snowy mountains, and it's very descriptive in the book how he was feeling cold, how he lost his glove, how he had, frozen feet and everything. And, there's this point where he realizes that the purpose of his life is basically his wife, maybe his comrades and others. And that's what would give meaning to his death. So he cannot die unless he is with them. And I think that this is what keeps him moving. No.
Does it say that though?
It doesn't say in this chapter, but it says in a different one. And I'm trying to sort of, connect the ideas from the whole book and to see different chapters with the lens of other chapters, and like I'm basically trying to get into the head of the author,
Yeah.
And I just want to read this quote from exactly this chapter, which talks about the comrades. And it goes on to say, it is rich in those secret, hidden, remote gardens to which our work always brings us back someday. And I know this quote sounds very disconnected, but what is it saying? That camaraderie and our friends, if we met them at a certain during certain work, during certain event of our lives, we become really attached. And those are these secret gardens, no matter what, no matter if you have to move away from the place, if you like disconnect from that friend, if you something happens, something happens and you are not in contact with this friend. But if that friendship, if that bond was forged under an amazing experiences, very strong experiences, then you have this little secret garden that you can always enter, where time does not fly, where the power of that experience and the beauty, I think beauty is a huge part of this book, where if you've experienced that beauty, there's no way of, destroying the bond.
Yeah. I'm actually a bit surprised that like you dislike those chapters so much, because I think especially like the quote I'm going to read now, I thought that would have been something you would really like. So to be man is precisely to be responsible. It is to know shame at the sight of poverty, which is not of our making. It is to be proud of a victory won by our comrades. It is to feel, as we place our stone, that we are contributing to the building of the world.
Wait, on which page is it?
29.
Wait, let me see if I actually underlined it.
Like, I thought that would be like one of those themes of the book.
Hey, man. I didn't. Oh yeah, I do underline to be man is precisely to be responsible. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that would be one of those themes that you would really like and appreciate.
Well, yet like I didn't want to start with the economic and politics systems and stuff like that, like the building of history and stuff. I wanted to save it for later, but it's definitely a huge part of the book.
Yeah, I know. I think it's like that quote says a lot about his vision of the world and his worldview. Yeah.
What do you think his worldview is? To someone watching us right now, not knowing this book, what would you say it's the author's, the Exupery's view of the world?
Yeah, I think we can talk about like this more general question later on, because we're going to explore a lot more themes or like more chapters of this book, and I think it will become clearer.
Okay.
While talking about it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know. I really like this photo. Like I wrote it down. So yeah, afterwards there's the aircraft.
The airline. No, that's the first one.
Yeah, no, the aircraft. That's actually something where he talks about the purpose of machines, and that it would ultimately be to be something that we don't even have to notice.
Oh yes, there's very beautiful quote.
About perfection.
About perfection that
really.
about invisibility, basically. That the purpose that's always the purpose of a machine is to become invisible. And simplicity. That I cannot find a quote right now, but
yeah, exactly. Like he talks about perfection being the state where you can't take anything away.
Yes, that there's a nice contrast that beauty or perfection in his words is not a state in which you can add more things to something, but a state in which you cannot,
not where you, where you.
Yeah, I said it's not when you can add things, but it's when
you can't add. He said it's not a state where you can't add anything more.
Yeah, it's that state when you cannot add something to it, but when you cannot subtract something from it. That it's so basic, that's the perfection.
Yeah.
So that was a bit confusing now, but we got the idea, and I think that's great. I think it's especially fitting for right now. Like if you look around ourselves, You can see my room behind me. We are, captured by so many things around us, and we always, like, our society, our Western society is just so enclaved and imprisoned to some extent by the ideas of perfection. And we think about perfection of always changing something, always innovating, always, like, no, innovation is a bit different, but, like, making things bigger and better looking by adding up, like, like fashion, like, if you just wear black t-shirt, black jeans, and that's it, and then you have someone who wears, suit, a tie, and everything, and there's just, everything on that guy. Fashion considers the latter, the second guy, to be more handsome, and I think this is what
I think in public you would also get problems with that approach, because you would be half naked if you were only wearing.
Okay, it depends where you set the bar, where you cannot, where you cannot know, when you no longer can, subtract things. I got confused with my own words right now, but this is what I think he's trying to say, like, simplicity. And there he describes the process of the airplane, sort of, we make an invention, a steam machine back in 200 years ago. It's big, it's clumsy, it's dangerous quite to run it to, and it has a lot of things. But within time, the scientists, they can look at it and see what parts are necessary. And this is the word, this is the importance, what is necessary and what is not. And then they start perfecting it, start making it smaller. They remove things until it's just the steam machine that we need, nothing else. And I think that's a beautiful process.
Yeah, I think he talks about, like, the engine of an airplane in that way.
Yeah. Really? Okay.
I
didn't know that, but yeah.
And he talks about, like, perfection to the point where it's like the curve of a human chest or shoulder.
Yeah.
That's what he uses as, like, an example of perfection, which is interesting because it comes again, like, from the human body, from humanity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's not something artificially created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I have nothing else to add to this.